Hello friends, it's the Stitches. In a continuation of my goal to focus on making basics for my wardrobe this year, today I'm going to share how I made a pair of essential t-shirts. The first step, as always, is to make my pattern. I started with a very basic Simplicity t-shirt pattern that I traced onto some craft paper. You can get a big roll of craft paper wherever you buy shipping supplies. Of course, I could have started making my pattern from scratch, and that perhaps would have been easier in the long run, but I simply could not have been bothered to take updated measurements of myself. I wanted a boxy silhouette for my final garments, so as you can see here, I taped some scrap bits of paper to the sleeve pattern so that I could straighten out the seam, since the original pattern was intended to be more fitted. On the actual body of the shirt, I started my adjustments by shortening the pieces pretty dramatically. This was originally a men's shirt pattern, and I'm using air quotes around the term men. So it's designed for a pretty long torso, which I personally do not possess. Next, I taped some scrap paper to the side seam just like I did on the sleeves so that I could straighten out the seam for, again, a boxier shape. And here's my rough draft of this pattern. I knew I would still have plenty of adjustments to make, but this was a good start for making an initial mock-up. You can see that the back piece is a little bit longer than the front. This is purposeful. I'll be making some side bends at the hem so the final seam doesn't bunch up around my hips, and the back will hang just a tiny bit longer than the front. It's a small detail that really goes a long way for making this style of shirt a little more flattering. So here is my first mock-up. The biggest issue with the fit was the width of the shoulder seams. I like a nice drop shoulder on oversized pieces, but this wasn't what I was going for here, so I needed to take a lot of bulk out of the shoulders. I also wanted to bring the armscye up a couple of inches for a better fit overall. Obviously, the length of the sleeves and the width of the shirt body needs to be adjusted, but I didn't want to mess with those particular measurements until after I fixed the shoulder and the armscye. Now we have the second mock-up. Now that the shoulder and neckline are corrected, I can more accurately decide how much length to take off of the sleeve, as well as how much to take the body of the shirt in. In both of my mock-ups, you'll notice I did one side without a sleeve. This is so I can make a tank version of this pattern later on, just to have on hand. After making the adjustments for my second mock-up, I was pretty confident with my pattern, so I cut out a clean final version, and now we're ready to move on to the fabric selection process. I told myself I wasn't going to buy any fabric for this project, but then I looked through the fabrics that I have, and I don't have any knit. I did not have what I needed for this project, so I looked through my saved swatches. I think these are really the only knits that I already had swatches of. So I really like the weight of this fabric. These are both the same fabric, just in different colors. It's very heavyweight, and it is 100% organic cotton. This other interlock swatch that I have is also a pretty good option. However, I could not find neither of these, and even this one, which is even a little bit thinner, none of these swatches came in a nice red. And I want sort of like a nice jewel-toned red. Because I want to make a black t-shirt and a red t-shirt. I want at least 2 t-shirts. And these only came in cool tones. And I wanted something... I just wanted something that they didn't have. So I would have gotten these if I was only getting a black fabric. But that was not the case. So
I didn't find anything at Fabric Warehouse Direct, which is, they don't have like the best quality fabrics, but they do have like stuff that's good for being on a budget. Like they're very inexpensive fabrics. This is where I got my cotton voile fabric. However, all of their knits were synthetic. They did not have any 100% cotton knits at all. And I wanted cotton, so I tried a different place. I don't know if you can see that. I got swatches from somewhere else. So these are the swatches that I actually ordered. I didn't like their red interlock. It was just too bright. But I did like this red. I thought that this was really nice. I hope that the camera is picking up an accurate color, but this is gorgeous. This is a hemp blend. I ordered both the Heretic color, this like nice deep red, and their spice color, which is this sort of rusty orange. I also really like this, but I preferred this red. It doesn't say on my receipt what the blend of this is, but it's like hemp and cotton and the teeniest, tiniest little bit of synthetic. And I wish that it didn't have the elastane in it, but whatever, it's good enough. I also got this clay cotton jersey. This is just a bit too thin. I think this was 100% cotton, but it's very, like, it's thinner than even this one was. It's very, yeah, I think you can even see through it when I pull it. This one isn't the thickest fabric. It's also kind of see-through, but I like the color so much, and I also like the fact that it's hemp, so I'm willing to overlook the thinness of this fabric. And then I also ordered some of their bamboo, and even though this is like 200 GSM, it's still incredibly thin. So, and I wanted something thicker. I liked the thickness and the stretchiness of their cotton interlock. I didn't order anything but the bamboo and black because I figured black is just black. I was really more interested in figuring out what colors I wanted. So I did order the black in their standard cotton interlock just because I like the weight of it and I thought that it would be exactly what I needed. And then I also ordered this. They gave me some like other random samples for other fabrics that I didn't order. I only ordered these swatches, but they sent me this, which is a washable merino wool, and this is gorgeous. This is such nice fabric, and I genuinely considered getting this over any of the swatches that I ordered, but then I looked this up on the website and it's $40 a yard. So I did not get the washable merino, despite how lovely it is. But those are the swatches that I ordered that I will have to add to this book of my saved swatch fabrics. But I did get my fabric in the mail. This was in like another envelope, but this is what I got. Yep, I ordered 1.5 yards of each. This is just so gorgeous. This is so pretty. I'm so excited to have a t-shirt made out of this. Although there is some stray threads on the selvage. That's fine. These are just, those don't actually matter. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. And then this is just a nice, thick, heavyweight, 100% cotton knit. This will make a good shirt as well. So I need to wash these because you always want to wash your fabrics first, especially if they are natural fibers, because they are going to shrink the first time. But then after I wash these, then I will be ready to cut everything out.
But first, this seems like a good time to take a quick commercial break. The red hemp blend fabric was a little too slippery and stretchy for my chalk pencil to handle, so I just used ink to trace out my pattern pieces. It won't be noticeable when the garment is finished. If you're cutting out smaller pieces on sturdy woven fabrics, it's perfectly okay to just lay the pattern piece directly on top of the fabric and cut around it. But with larger pieces on fabric types like a knit that like to move around and stretch and warp, you really do need to trace out your pattern pieces first. You don't want the fabric to shift or go off grain because it will really negatively affect how the final garment hangs. With all my pattern pieces cut out for both shirts, I'm ready to prep them for sewing. I serged all of my pieces first. I suppose this isn't strictly necessary since these fabrics aren't going to fray or unravel, but it makes the inside of the garment look so much more polished. From this point forward, I'll only be showing you the construction process on the red fabric because it shows up on camera much better than the black fabric. Since my knit fabric is so temperamental, I want to make sure that my machine is properly set up before I start stitching my pieces together. When sewing with t-shirt materials, you always want to use a ballpoint or jersey needle in your machine. It's designed to pass through the fabric without leaving any holes, unlike a standard universal needle. This will dramatically improve the lifespan of a homemade t-shirt. It's worth noting that I also use jersey needles on my serger as well. After the needles on my machine were switched out, I just made a few rows of stitching on a scrap piece of my fabric to test the tension settings. I don't need or want my seams to stretch for this particular shirt design, so I'll just be using a straight stitch, which my machine handles much better than a knit stitch. I pinned all of my construction seams together at the same time, the side seam on the sleeves, the side seam on the shirt body, and the shoulder seams, so that I could stitch them all at once as well. I suppose this is a good time to mention that I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is probably the quickest part of the whole project. T-shirts are really defined by the preparation and the finishing techniques more than anything else. With the construction seams done, I pressed them open at the ironing table. While I still had my iron nice and hot, I folded in the hem on the sleeves. I don't actually remember how wide I made the hem, but it looks like 5/8 of an inch. Back at my machine, I secured the vents on the side of my shirt body by stitching down the seam allowance about a 1/4 inch from the edge. There are many much more elegant methods for finishing a side vent, but it works just fine to do it this way. I took this back over to the iron and pressed the hem using the same width as the sleeves, whatever that was, and secured it with pins. I stitched all my hems at once, both of the sleeves and the shirt body, using 2 rows of stitching to make a false twin needle effect. I do still have the original twin needle that came with my machine, but you simply cannot force me to learn how to use it. Next, I attached my sleeves to the shirt body. This is pretty straightforward. Pin the sleeves in place and stitch them down. Really no different than any other sleeve installation. Arguably even easier because you don't need to do any easing or gathering since the fabric just stretches to fit. Here's how the shirt looks so far. It's so close to being done, I just need to cut and install a collar band. I didn't pattern the collar band because the size it needs to be is entirely dependent on how much stretch the fabric has. Instead, I measured around the collar of the shirt and subtracted a few inches. The collar piece on screen that I'm showing you right now is 2.5 inches by about 18 inches. I don't remember the width of the neck opening at this point because it was a while ago that I filmed this. 22 inches. I don't know, this isn't really a tutorial and it hardly matters. I took this piece to the iron and folded it in half so that I have a long, doubled over strip of fabric. Then I pinned the short edge wrong sides together, matching the center fold. I just serged the ends together instead of a more robust seam. It'll be fine. Back at the iron, I pressed the seam back into place, so now I have a piece of fabric that's actually starting to look like a collar band. The raw edges are also serged before I attach my collar to my shirt. The collar will need to be eased into the shirt since obviously they won't fit perfectly together. The collar band fabric is stretched so that it lays flat when you wear the shirt. If you used a perfectly fitted collar band, it would stick up, sort of like a mandarin collar, and on a t-shirt, that would look really weird. Unless you're going for like a mock neck or a turtleneck, but that's not what we're doing here. I pinned the collar in a few places, matching up my center front and center back, and a few more equidistant points. That way the fabric is stretched evenly across the seam. Then while stitching, the collar band is gently pulled while I sew to stretch it to fit the next seam. So I have a confession to make. Well, a couple of confessions. When I initially made this shirt, I had every intention of including some twill tape along the back of the neckline. This is a feature in most higher-end t-shirts that keeps the collar from slowly stretching out over time. And I did actually install the band initially. However, the twill tape was kind of a sensory nightmare. The back of my neck is just very sensitive and I couldn't handle it, so I ripped it out and didn't bother to replace it with anything else. My second confession is that the original neckline on this red t-shirt that I made was just a tiny bit too small. This is how finicky knit fabrics are. I used the exact same pattern and the exact same method with my black t-shirt that was made from a thicker material, and the neckline was perfect, but for some reason, despite the red fabric being much thinner and stretchier, the neckline was too small and needed to be trimmed. I don't understand. When I finished the red shirt, only to pull it on and have it not fit, I was simply too sad and too overwhelmed to bother to properly film the process of removing and reattaching the collar. It was also like the dead of night, so here are some cell phone shots of the basic process. It's the same process, just I did it a second time because I had to. Oh well. These things happen. Let's look at the final garments. Starting with some detail shots, the neckband is much more comfortable without the twill tape, and I think the top stitching will help to preserve the neckline without it just fine. At least with the black shirt, which I plan on wearing more anyway, the fabric is thick enough that I'm not really concerned with it stretching out anytime soon. The red hemp blend, on the other hand, has a tiny bit of elastane in it, which, while I'm obviously not a fan of having any synthetics in my clothing, the whole point of elastane is to help knit fabrics keep their shape, so hopefully it'll, actually do its job. I'm really pleased with the side vents. They do the job of maintaining a boxy, relaxed fit. I really cannot overstate how essential these are for anyone with wider hips like myself. I understand that a basic t-shirt can seem like such a boring project, and there are so many of them out there that it may not seem worth it to make them yourself, but I personally cannot be happier to have custom fitted pieces made from high quality fabrics. I seriously spent an entire year looking for shirts that were just the right length, with just the right sleeves, and just the right weight, and actually fit my weird in-between measurements, and I seriously found nothing. I'm just too picky, I guess. So I broke down and made them myself, and I cannot recommend doing so enough. That's all for today's video. I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Thank you for watching this far if you made it all the way to the end, and I'll hopefully see you all next time. Bye!